Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be a list of all of the February 2025 releases that I'm really excited about. I will have all of the book information listed on the screen with me as I'm talking about the new releases, as well as in the description bar down below. So let's just go ahead and get started. This is a very stacked list. We got a lot of horror, some fantasy, some nonfiction, so let's dive in. The first new release comes out February 4th, and that is The Lamb by Lucy Rose. This is a contemporary queer folktale about a mother and daughter living in the woods for fans of Margaret Atwood and Julia Armfeld. This is a folktale, a horror story, a love story, and an enchantment. Margot and Mama have lived by the forest ever since Margot can remember. When Margot is not at school, they spend quiet days together in their cottage waiting for strangers to knock on their door. Strays, Mama calls them. It seems like Mama may or may not have a taste for human flesh, and the strays that come into their cabin never leave. Now, all of this changes one day when Margot meets one of these strays and decides that she does not want to live like by the rules of her mother anymore. So this one's going to be a cannibalistic queer folk tale. It's also a gothic coming of age, and Lucy Rose explores how women swallow their anger, desire, and animal instincts and wrings the relationship between mother and daughter until blood drips from it. So I'm intrigued. I've actually noticed, I feel like cannibalism is coming, like it's going to be like, I don't know how to say this, but like a very trendy subgenre in the horror genre. I feel like I've been seeing like a lot of books, or not even just books, but media just in general for horror fiction, just leaning into cannibalism, whether it's actual eating flesh or symbolically this year, and I'm very interested. The next book expected to release February 4th is actually one that I have already read and loved, and that would be Victorian Psycho. This is by Virginia Feito, and this one is actually already in the works to becoming a movie with Margaret Qualley, I believe, from The Substance. I was lucky enough to get an early arc of this via NetGalley, and I had a lot of fun with this one. This one's very bloody, very gruesome. It's obviously by the title an homage to American Psycho, but this one feels very much like a mix of Jane Eyre and Maeve Fly, and we are following a governess who is a very interesting character. She goes to this estate and she's going to govern over two small children, but she has ulterior motives for going to this estate, and things are going to get quite bloody before the finale. This one, I'm really excited to see it turned into a movie. It is shorter. I feel like it already has the perfect pacing for just a wild movie that, much like The Substance, is going to have like a lot of seemingly very over-the-top gore. This one is not for the faint of heart. There are some very like dark scenes, and if you think back to the setup, how this is a governess taking care of two small children, you may kind of understand where I'm hinting at with this. This has a high body count in the pages of this book, gets very bloody and very graphic with depictions of murdering people. This one was just such a bloody fun time. I feel like it's going to be a book and then a movie that a lot of people are going to talk about and love because it is being turned into a movie adaptation already. So I cannot wait to see that. Y'all should check this one out because I had a lot of fun with it. The next book coming out the 4th is Listen to Your Sister. This is by Neena Viel, and this one is for fans of Jordan Peele films Stranger Things and The Other Black Girl. This is laugh out loud while deeply terrifying, and a big-hearted speculative horror novel from an electrifying debut author. It looks like in this book we are following three siblings, and in particular 25-year-old Kala Williams, who is struggling since becoming guardian to her brother Jamie. Jamie is 16 years old, and he's full of good-natured 16-year-old recklessness, and he's usually fighting for what matters to him or getting into mischief. Dre, their brother, promised he would help raise Jamie, but in classic middle child fashion, he's off doing his own thing. Throughout all of this, the nightmare never stops haunting Kala, reoccurring images of her brothers dying that she is powerless to stop. When Jamie's actions at a protest spiral out of control, the siblings must go on the run. Taking refuge in a remote cabin that looks like it belongs on a slasher movie poster rather than an Airbnb, the siblings now face a new threat where their lives and reality hang in the balance, and Calla realizes that the nightmare that she's been having for so long may not actually be a nightmare after all. So this one I am really intrigued by. The comp titles, obviously, and as an older sister, as an older sibling, you want to protect your younger siblings. You want to take care of them, and especially in Calla's situation, she's the legal guardian of one of them. So she really has this maternal and also just older sibling pull to protect her younger siblings, like a lot of us older siblings do. However, I just think the fact that, you know, I worry about my younger siblings all of the time. I can't imagine then putting that dynamic into a very creepy horror movie scenario where supernatural things are starting to happen. I already worry about not being able to protect them sufficiently for the world, and just adding a supernatural terror threat. I think this one's going to be really interesting. Jordan Peele, Stranger Things, both of those have that comedic and horror balance that this book says that it has, and I love a good sibling dynamic, especially in horror, so I am really looking forward to checking this one out. My next anticipated release comes out February 11th, and that is The Dollhouse Academy by Margarita Montimore. This is a novel about two best friends and aspiring actresses who join the Dollhouse Academy, where stars are made and dangerous secrets are hidden. Ivy Gordon is living a borrowed life on borrowed time. For the past 18 years, she has been the most famous star at the Dollhouse Academy, an ultra-secretive elite boarding school and talent incubator that every aspiring performer dreams of attending. But now at age 34, she is tired of pretending everything is fine. In secret diary entries, Ivy begins to reveal the sordid truth of her life, with the strange medical exams, mysterious supplements, and something unspeakable that's left Ivy terrified and feeling like a prisoner. We're also following Ramona and her best friend Grace. They both grew up idolizing Ivy. They're 22 years old. Neither of them has made much headway in the showbiz until a lucky break grants them entry to the Dollhouse. They're enchanted by the picturesque campus and the chance to perform alongside their idols, though nothing prepares them for this fiercely competitive training boot camp. When Ramona begins to receive anonymous threatening messages, it's easy to dismiss them as a prank from a rival. However, the messages grow more and more unsettling, as does life at the Dollhouse. This is with dark academia twists, an enormous heart. It's a novel about the complexities of friendship, our desire to be seen and understood, and the true cost of making our dreams a reality. I love a dark academia horror. I love like a boarding school, secret society, something that seems so idyllic, and then you peel off the shiny veneer and something horrifying lurks underneath. This is the same author that wrote Una Out of Order. I believe that one is a literary fiction, and I'm really interested to see like this very new direction for this author. The next anticipated release coming out on February 11th is the Pink Agave Motel and Other Stories by V. Castro. This is a short story collection by V. Castro. I really tend to like this author's work. Some of the books have been a little bit not my favorite. In particular, the newest one about vampires I didn't love, but I have loved, absolutely loved other things by this author. So I'm very interested to see like what this short story collection has in store for me. It says readers are invited to the Pink Agave Motel, where brutality and intimacy ooze across the pages, exploring the depths of the unhinged imagination and how human desire unlocks the impulse to bite. Castro's voice, influenced by Mexican folklore and a feminist perspective, illuminates a deeper view of how unrequited love affects every type of being alike. So I really like V. Castro's, even in the works that I haven't loved. I love the storytelling style, and V. Castro has such a handle, first of all, on Mexican mythology and just different types of mythologies and folklores, and twisting them to have like a new feminist perspective, but just also the writing style is so uniquely V. Castro, and I don't think I've read a short story collection from V. Castro yet, so I am really excited to check this one out. Next up is my only nonfiction on the list. Coming out February 11th, we have Sick Houses, Haunted Homes, and the Architecture of Dread by Leila Taylor, and this one is interesting to me because I love a good haunted house story. First of all, like I love it in books, TV shows, movies. It's one of my favorite horror tropes, but I am, especially this year, trying to get into reading more nonfiction, and I'm always always looking for more like horror-centric nonfiction, because I firmly believe, I mean, this is not a hot take, but if you seek out nonfiction that you have an interest in the subject matter, it's going to go better than if you're just like, I want to read nonfiction and just start grabbing random buzzy titles. So I am intrigued in this one. It explores the architecture of haunted houses, uncanny domestic spaces, and how the horror genre subverts and corrupts the sanctity of home. Sick Houses explores how the horror genre in film, television, and literature uses architecture and the ideology of the home against us. It looks at the mythology of the American dream and how the lure of home ownership becomes a trap. It celebrates the witch house, the power of the crone, and the fear of aging women who live alone. It explores how concrete utopias become ready-made mise-en-scène for urban terror. So definitely looking forward to checking out this nonfiction and reading more about haunted houses. The next book is also coming out the 11th, and that would be Beta Vulgaris by Margie Sarsfield. This is a very striking cover, and I think this is a little bit litfic, a little bit horror. It's also tagged as sci-fi, so I'm not really sure what kind of vibe this one is going to give off. But a young woman's seasonal job takes a dark, surreal turn in this vivid and surprising debut. When Elise and her boyfriend Tom set off for Minnesota, all she knows about harvesting sugar beets, or Beta Vulgaris, is that her paycheck will cover a few months' rent on their Brooklyn apartment. She'll try anything to escape the incessant debt collection calls and chronic anxieties about her body and her relationship. But as the grueling graveyard shift sets in, Elise notices strange, threatening texts, a mysterious rash, a string of disappearances from the workers' campsite, and snatches of a hypnotic voice coming from the beet pile itself. I'm very interested to see what's going on here. Honestly, I'm filming this before the Aardvark book box picks are released for February. This feels like an Aardvark book box pick, I'm not gonna lie. It's like horror, sci-fi, litfic, and it just sounds very dreamy, very strange. And this one, you know, it says it's biting and eerie. It harnesses an audacious premise to undermine straightforward narratives of class, trauma, redemption, and consumption. So there's another one where the horror themes are focused around consumption in some sort of way. I'm intrigued. This next book releases the 18th, and it's one of my most anticipated releases of the year, just based on the cover and the short blurb for it. That would be Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. I love this cover. I love a cover that takes like a piece of art, a painting, and uses it for, in particular, a vampire story. Hungerstone is a thrillingly seductive sapphic romance for fans of S.T. Gibson's A Dowry of Blood, and that is one of my favorite vampire stories, so I am really itching to get to this one. Set against the violent wilderness of the moors and the uncontrolled appetite of the Industrial Revolution, Hungerstone is a compulsive feminist reworking of Carmilla, a captivating story of appetite and desire. I've read Carmilla. I honestly recommend it a lot as a classic, especially a horror classic for people who are trying to get into classics. It's very readable. It's very easy to understand. It doesn't feel very intimidating, and there is a new annotated version out with annotations from Carmen Maria Machado, I believe, and that I think really makes it even more accessible. And I love the story. It predates Dracula, and it is about sapphic vampires. Now, because it was written a very long time ago, the ways in which it views vampirism and also just being queer and being sapphic does not view them in a positive light. So this is one where I appreciate the original for the horror that it is, but I think that a modern retelling, not a modern retelling, I mean it was written in 2024 or so modern in that sense. It's taking place during the Industrial Revolution, so I feel like a retelling of Carmilla is just really going to work for me. So I'm just so excited. I really have high hopes for this one. Fingers crossed that I'm not jinxing myself here, but the cover is beautiful. The premise is so exciting for me. This is one of my most anticipated of the year for sure. The other book that I wanted to talk about that's coming out the 18th is Cursebound by Saara El-Arifi. This is book number 2 in the Feybound series, and I read Feybound last year. Absolutely loved it. I really enjoyed enjoy Saara El-Arifi's work, and I'm a little embarrassed to say the Final Strife series, I still have not completed it. I've not finished it. I need to finish it this year because I absolutely love that series so far, and I'm really enjoying this series as well. So I thought, you know, this year, last year I didn't really talk about like continuing series, but this year I'm gonna try and do so because I would be lying if I made a February releases video and didn't talk about some of the books that are coming out that are already a part of series. So this series, if you haven't heard of the first book, Feybound, we are following some elven sisters and they get entangled into the world of the Fae, and this is significant because they thought the Fae were just fairy tales and that they didn't actually exist, but they find out amidst a civil war amongst the elves that Fae are real and they have very real powers and opinions and politics that could influence the elven civil war. This is a romantasy series that really blends the two fantasy and romance elements really well. We follow two sisters. They both find, at least in the first book, we're pretty sure that we know who both of the love interests are, and then how the politics and different allegiances impact how those, like how realistic those relationships are going to be, and just the slow burn of it all. I am really excited to continue on with this series, and this is a series that just has an absolutely gorgeous set of covers. I loved the first cover, this second cover really striking as well. Next up is a book in translation that's already out but comes out in English February 25th. This is Death Takes Me by Cristina Rivera Garza, and it's translated by Robin Myers and Sarah Booker. This is another cover that I just am so drawn to. It's so beautiful, like that oil painting sort of artwork I love. So this is a dreamlike, genre-defying novel about a professor and a detective seeking justice in a world suffused with gendered violence. This also looks like one that's going to be a little bit meta and experimental with the way it's being told, because the blurb says, "A city is always a cemetery. When a professor named Cristina Rivera Garza stumbles upon the corpse of a man in a dark alley, she finds a stark warning scrawled on the brick wall beside the body." Obviously, the main character's name is the author's name, so I am interested in that. This says it's a thrilling masterpiece of literary fiction that flips the traditional crime narrative on its head. In a world where death is rampant and violence is gendered, written in sentences as sharp as the cuts on the bodies of the victims, a word which, in Spanish, is always feminine, Death Takes Me unfolds with the charged logic of a dream, moving from the professor's classroom into the slippery worlds of Latin American poetry and art, as it explores with masterful imagination the unstable terrains of desire and sexuality. This book originally came out in 2007. I am so excited that it's finally getting an English translation because I'm just so intrigued by the premise of this one and just like what is going to be explored within this narrative. Next up, we have Something in the Walls by Daisy Pearce. This comes out February 25th, and this one follows a newly minted child psychologist, Neena. She has very little experience, but in a field where the first people called are the experts, she's been unable to get her feet wet. She's hoping that is about to change with a new assignment. Neena attends a local bereavement group to mourn her brother's death, and there she meets journalist Sam Hunter at the grief group, who has a proposition for her. 13-year-old Alice Weber claims that a witch is haunting her. Living with her family in the remote village of Banethel, Alice finds her symptoms are getting increasingly disturbing. Taking this job will give Neena some experience and some money. Sam will get the scoop of a lifetime, and Alice will get better under the care of a mental health professional. Neena is sure of it. But instead of improving, Alice's behavior becomes inexplicable and intense. The town of Banethel has a deep history of superstition and witchcraft. They believe there's evil in the world, they believe there are ways of dealing with it, and they don't expect outsiders to understand. So I'm very intrigued by this premise. I've liked this premise in horror movies and fiction before, but it usually has to deal with like demonic possession. So I am really interested to see this story kind of moving away from possession possession and moving towards witchcraft. Now, I've said that I have enjoyed premises like this in the past. I do think there's a very fine line that can be easy to cross if we're exploring things like, oh, this mental health episode is actually demonic possession or actually witchcraft, because very real people in history have been demonized for having mental health issues and having mental health episodes, and them being like accused of being demonic or being a witch. So I'm cautiously intrigued for this one and seeing where this story goes. And then last but not least, coming out February 25th is The Dark Mirror by Samantha Shannon. This is book 5 in the Bone Season series, and I'm so excited to dive into this one. Because it's book 5, I can't talk a lot about it, but I just wanted to share the cover, talk about that it is coming out very soon, and I'm very excited for it. I don't think I'll be picking this one up in February. I kind of want to do a reread of the whole series so far and then dive into it. I love this series. It's very different than A Priory of the Orange Tree, which a lot of people might know Samantha Shannon from. This is set in the very near future, 2045 or 2055, I believe, but it is a world that is very dystopian. It's a world where if you have magical powers or clairvoyancy, then you are hunted down by the government. It is illegal to have these powers. Our main character, Paige, has these powers, and at the beginning of book 1, she is found out, she is captured, she is sent to a camp where people with these powers have to go. It's a very high security prison set up for them, and once she arrives there, she realizes nothing what she was taught and what the government is telling the people is true, and it really branches out into a sprawling series that feels like the scope of an epic fantasy, but it's very like sci-fi, almost superhero-ish in the way that the powers interact with each other, and just the high concept, because it's a very high-tech world. It's set in the future, so we have these ragtag group of survivors that are trying to survive being public enemy number 1 in a very Big Brother-esque society where being different and having these powers are punishable by death. So I'm really excited to dive into this one. The 4th book left off in such an interesting situation, and I cannot wait to figure out what happens next in this series. So those are all the books that I am looking forward to checking out that release in the month of February. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know down below what books are you most looking forward to coming out this month. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any content from me. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!